Hello and welcome back to this channel. Hope you're well. My name is Ruth and today's video is all about preparing for that assistant psychology job interview. In video number 1 on this series, we looked at the values and the visions of the trust you'll be working for, and today we're asking ourselves, what type of service or what type of trust will I be working in? Hi there, so before we actually get into this video, I would like to remind you that subscription is free, so make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and let's get this conversation going. So in terms of assistant psychology job interviews, they're usually around the health sector or the educational sector. And within these two sectors, there are so many services within these sectors. Within the educational sector, I tend to find it's usually the learning disability team that tend to work with the educational sector. And in terms of the health sector, there are so many services, and I'll give you some examples. So there may be the forensic team, the early interventions in psychosis team, the paternal mental health team, the stroke team, the CAM service, which is children, adolescents, mental health service or community mental health. There is just so many services within a team, and the list goes on and on and on. So by me even listing a few of these services, we can already see that these services are so unique and so diverse. So it's very important that once you've got this interview, make sure you are acquainted with the service that you'll be working with, that you know the backgrounds of this service. It might not have to be like a deep, thorough thing, but make sure you know what a forensic service may offer or what may be different in terms of working with paternal mental health. So have these things in mind when you're preparing for that interview. So in terms of my personal experience, I thought it'd be useful to kind of share with you the things that I considered and also the questions that I went through, and also some action points that will help you in preparing for your assistant psychology job interview. So interview number 2 for me out of the 8 was in a learning disability team within the CAM service. And I remember for this interview, I was asked a question that went along the lines of, what is a learning disability? I think it was very broad like that. And in this answer, they were looking for me to answer about what a learning disability is in terms of the technical definition, and also to add, I would also in that situation give an example of times where I may have worked with someone with a learning disability, and also just showcasing that I was a fit candidate for working within a learning disability service. But in terms of my other interviews, I don't think I was asked like a very direct question, like for example, what is a forensic service or what is forensic psychology? I don't think in my other interviews I was asked a direct question, but it's good to prepare because we all have interviews all around, and they may ask you that general question of what is a learning disability if you have a interview within a learning disability service. So also some things to consider when you're thinking about the service or team you'll be working with is, what are the possible challenges that you may face while working within the service or working within this team? And I'll give you 2 examples from 2 different services. So imagine you have a job interview within a children and adolescents mental health service. You have to think to yourself, what are the challenges you may face working with this service? Because I believe in some of my interviews I've actually been asked this question. So in terms of a CAM service, I would say one of the challenges I may face is maybe a lack of engagement, because you are working with adolescents, and I've realized in terms of services, adolescents and teenagers tend to at some times lack engagement. And then through this answer, I would say, yes, even though I may have a challenge of service users engaging with service, so a way that I would tackle, this lack of engagement is that I am an enthusiastic person. In this situation of A, B, C, D, I basically showed enthusiasm, and I was able to encourage a service user to engage in a service. You can also talk about getting to know your service users, because as you get to know someone, you will know their likes and dislikes, and you will probably think about things that may be relevant to that person. Or you can talk about using humor as a way to engage. Everyone loves a bit of laughter. So what I just described to you was, you answered the question, you said, yes, this is a challenge I was facing, but then you show examples of how you may tackle this challenge. But lastly, make sure you do not forget to basically say, through this experience of working with this and this service user, it made me a better clinician in this way, and this will help me to be a great, I'm using the word great, will help me to be an efficient assistant psychologist in working with the CAMHS service because of these things. So these are just some things that came to mind. And another example I can give, which is a question I definitely believe I had to answer, was when I had some interviews in terms of a forensic service. So I think I had 3 out of 8 of my interviews were in a forensic service, and I was asked the question, what type of challenges would I be faced working within a forensic service? And I believe one of my answers was, I may face, physical aggression or verbal aggression. So that's me identifying what the challenge is, and I can give an example of my previous experience as a therapy worker or support worker, where a service user has used physical or verbal aggression, and I could just explain to the interview panel how I felt and what was the situation. But most importantly, I have to tell them how I dealt with that situation. And if you didn't deal with that situation in the way you would have liked to, you can share within this time frame how you would deal with it better, and how you would use all the means possible to deal with this situation. And I think one of the examples I gave in this question was when a service user was displaying physical aggression, I made sure that the service user was not in contact with all the other patients, making sure that we were not in the way. Like, for example, if they were throwing objects, making sure that we were in a safe place. I actually can't remember what I asked, but this example, I guess, if you haven't worked in a setting like this, I'd never worked in a forensic service before, but I use examples from my previous experience that would be relevant to working with a forensic service. So those are just 2 examples, and you can probably use a relevant example depending on the service or trust you'll be having an interview for. So dear friends, what are some action points? So I've written down some action points and I'm going to read them out. So an action point I wrote is, find out what service you'll be working with. So are you going to be working with community mental health? Are you going to be with the forensic service, learning disability service? Find out what service or trust you'll be working with, because this just gives you an understanding of the things that you may face on a day-to-day basis, and it also gives you an understanding of the type of service that you'll be working in. It is your desire to get this job, so it will even give you a peace of mind just knowing what this service is about. Another action point I would say is, think about what type of mental disorders would be more relevant to this service. So I'll give you an example. I had a job interview within the forensic service, and through my research about forensic services, I found that most service users within the forensic service have personality disorder. And then through just reading about how the NHS were helping those with personality disorder in forensic services, I found out as well that most people with personality disorder tend to have a trauma in the past. This means that in this service there will be a high focus on trauma-informed care. So this means that, as I found out, yes, in this service there may be a high rate of people that have personality disorder. So that means as a worker I have to be acquainted with trauma-informed care, because most people with personality disorder have trauma, and I need to be performing or giving trauma-informed care. Another action point is think about the possible challenges you may be faced within the service, and thinking about those examples I gave you. So is a challenge that there may be lack of engagement? Is a challenge physical or verbal aggression? Is a challenge that there may be difficulty to have a work and life balance? Think about these challenges and think about how you have experienced similar challenges and how you can resolve them, and how through going through these challenges it has made you a better clinician. So make sure you are also reflective in these answers. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any ideas or questions, please leave it below. And if there are anything specific that you would like to know about assistant psychology job interviews, also comment below and I'll be happy to hear from you. So have a lovely day and see you in the next one. Enthusiastic person. I was going to say enthusiastic. Yeah.